Well, hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Jaamil. It is my immense pleasure to welcome you to this show, to this platform, to this series, this moment in time. We're delving in, we're asking questions about art and finance. And with one of my dearest and truest friends, I have the pleasure of welcoming the Amy Smith to On the Couch. Thank you so much for being with us, Amy. Um, Welcome. How are you
Thanks so
today?
much. I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me on the couch.
Hey, thank you for accepting the challenge. Um, where we talk about work, but we make it relaxing.
Yes.
Well, Amy, you and I, we've been having this conversation, I feel, for many years, around art and money and finance and just sort of trying to keep it together, especially as an independent artist, especially as a dance maker, a dance laborer, worker, however we want to language it. And so it just felt important to bring you into this conversation as someone who has just really been an immense guide and support. I'm so grateful for your guidance, throughout these years on keeping me in the black as you never would have thought this white woman would, would be able to keep me in the black, but that's what's happening. That is what's happening.
And you're not the only one.
Hey, and that part. But yeah, Amy, are there like would there be a tip and trick that you might offer? Well, actually, before we delve
Yeah.
into that. Um, I'm curious, Amy, how do you identify yourself and think about the work you're doing with art and money in the world?
Yes. Well, I wear many hats, as you know. Even with you, I have worn many hats. We've collaborated artistically when you danced with Headlong, and we worked together with Headlong's Incubated Artist Program that I founded. Um, I've worked with you doing kind of bookkeeping, budgeting, financial management support, and I do that with a handful of other artists and nonprofits. I do tax prep for artists. Um, I've been doing that for quite a while, and that sort of grew organically out of the bookkeeping and accounting and budgeting work I was doing um, as the sort of ad hoc CFO of Headlong, the dance company that I co-founded. Um, and then I also do some anti-racism co-facilitation work, mostly with Faith Jones Jackson, who's a Black theater artist based here in Lenapehoking, Philadelphia. Um, I teach workshops in financial well-being, taxes, and other financial issues that affect artists. And occasionally I act or perform in theater projects, cabaret. I've worked as a theater educator for many years as well. So yeah, I identify. I have many different things that I do kind of for money and love. And then in terms of my personal identity, I identify as white and non-disabled and middle class. Um, I've had an interesting um, growing up. I grew up with a lot of class consciousness and also class privilege. So I kind of one of the things I try to do with my clients and friends is to sort of share what I've learned and literally share some of the resources I have with folks who don't come from families that have been able to build intergenerational family wealth through home ownership, which is something that most white families like mine have been able to do over decades and centuries, really.
Hmm.
So that's kind of a passion of mine is to try to, um, I can't single-handedly right the wrongs of inequality or um, close the racial wealth gap, but I'm certainly going to do everything in my power to um, empower and encourage and support folks that are trying to do that work, or at the very least to be able to make decisions for themselves that are proactive instead of just being responsive to this the evils of late capitalism and racial capitalism.
Oh,
I should
Lord.
stop talking now. 'Cause it's
I
so
know, right? Headache. The pressure headache comes when we say the C word.
I know.
Oh, who's winning under
Really need to speak
capitalism?
out. Oh,
Oh, capitalism. Oh, God. Yeah, like I was talking to my partner recently, and he was just saying, like, yeah, there is no ethical consumption under, capitalism. And that has been something that it's stuck with me. Um I'm like, there is no escaping this thing. So how do we survive it? How do we survive in this system that literally just was not intended for us, and it's become, I don't know about anyone else, but like specifically in this year, in the 2023 year, and I'd be curious to know what you might have to say, or if there's some knowledge that you have, but what is it about 2023 that seems to be like the year of, I don't know, just like judgment, for lack of a better word, or for want of a better word, but it feels like everything has came into this space of needing to be reconciled, reconciliation. um yeah, I feel like if for me it feels like a bit of a late stage, like pandemic moment that I thought I was gonna feel in 2020, but it's like, oh no, it's actually it's 2023 where this is really pressurizing, yeah, the systems, as it were. But do you have any, like, I don't know, I don't think I'm making this up.
No, you're
Yeah.
not. I think a lot of artists are feeling very pressurized, very confused, very fragile and precarious right now, financially and kind of, career, professional, work wise.
Mm,
Um, there are a lot of different things happening at once, and I'm not even sure I have enough of a perspective to be able to weave those things together. But I think in 2020, after George Floyd was murdered, a lot of arts organizations made promises or um, hired anti-racism co-facilitators or worked on their DEIA agenda. Um, and then a couple years later, or a few years later now, I think a lot of those same organizations have basically abandoned that project
mm,
in the name of return to normal. We have to return to how things were pre-pandemic.
mhm,
So the lessons of the pandemic haven't really been learned in any kind of long-term way in our field, in the arts ecosystem. I think there are like a handful of arts organizations and funders and things that did pay attention and did make real change, meaningful change that has a material effect on the artists that they work with. But for the most part, it kind of feels like a really depressing return to the pre-pandemic values and practices of the nonprofit industrial complex. That's how I feel about it. And it just feels like such a missed opportunity, such a wasted opportunity.
yeah. Thank you for, yeah, just that honesty. Because I agree 100%. That is certainly a part of what's happening, for sure. Um
I like the way I guess the way it affects individual artists, or the way it affects people in my life who are arts workers or art creators or art makers, is, there were a few things during the pandemic, like these SBA, Small Business Administration loans and grants, and um, you know, um, kind of special projects. Being able to access unemployment compensation was huge for so many artists I know. Government programs or kind of funder programs or even mutual aid programs that felt like, oh, okay, we're starting to learn how to care for each other. We're starting to build more community care models and structures. And now it kind of feels like, well, some of those government programs have just ended, and it feels like the holes in those community care efforts are getting bigger and bigger once again. So I think that's part of it too.
Hmm. And I think there's a general exhaustion that's really happened, that's coming to really bear arms, and that I think many of us are certainly feeling. Just
Yeah,
yeah, just pure, just tired.
just tired. Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
yeah. So with that, then, are there some tips and tricks? What can we do in this moment, Amy, to make sure that at least that come tax season, the government isn't like running for us even harder,
Yeah.
myself included. Like, um, but this isn't about me, but this is about all of us. But what can we do?
Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So tax season is coming up. And one of the things, there's like a kind of an interesting push pull with that question because one of the things I always encourage people to do is to spend money on deductible things as an artist so that you're reducing your tax liability.
So what are deductibles?
Deductible things are things that you can deduct on Schedule C, which is where you report your self-employment income from your art practice or whatever else you do. You know, a lot of my clients are like dancers, but also yoga teachers and dog walkers and babysitters and whatever it is that you do as a self-employed person, you can deduct the expenses of that business. So
That includes transportation, right?
absolutely, going to
Getting
and
to
from
the
the dance
gig.
class, staying for the
Exactly.
dance class, renting the dance studio,
Equipment.
dancewear, all of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can write all that off. Equipment.
Equipment, absolutely, yeah. So, especially towards the end of the year, I'll often encourage people to look to, do a sort of sketch version, a very quick
Mm.
quick and easy version of the annual budget, the annual income and annual expenses for 2023 so that oh, wow, I had a really good year this year. I should try to spend some money before December 31st so that my tax liability won't be as big. Maybe you've been waiting to buy a new computer or a new phone or um, take a trip, take a research trip or something. So those are the kinds of things that you can do in the month of December to anticipate and mitigate your tax liability for the year.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Um, awesome. And then I guess, is there um I don't know, a way of budgeting or just thinking about cash flow, um, that we might want to consider, especially for those of us that are maybe in a more modest taxed bracket.
Mhm.
But yeah, just yeah, minding the budget, the cash flow. What ways are there that we might be able to do that a little bit better?
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, that's a big one and a hard one because as I was talking earlier about inherited family wealth and the kind of um, family safety net that a lot of white artists have, whether or not they utilize that safety net in the form of help with a down payment on a house or help with paying rent one month or whatever it is, that safety net is meaningful. Because one of the things that happens a lot with artists is you graduate from college or maybe even an MFA program with student loan debt. um, it's hard to build a life as an artist where your income and your expenses are equal, or even you're earning more income than you're spending on your practice. So it's hard to build savings, a cushion of savings. And it also means a lot of artists get into credit card debt or other kinds of debt, which is very expensive. So there's no simple answer to that question. But one thing I try to recommend to people is focus on the debt. When you have multiple forms of debt, focus on the debt that has the highest interest rate, which is usually credit card debt. And as you are paying that down, or after you have successfully paid that down or gotten it to a more manageable state, start building a cushion, an emergency fund for yourself, so that you can withstand future downturns like the pandemic in 2020 or whatever the next downturn will be, so that you have a little bit of a cushion to be able to withstand future downturns, take risks, deal with cash flow issues. Like, for example, a client or a grant or a gig even doesn't pay you right away. And so you're trying to like float the gig.
We've been there a couple
That's the
times.
highest interest. We get that check. Ah! For example, that's the kind of thing that you could utilize an emergency fund for, or try to get some kind of low interest rate line of credit or something like that. Because cash flow is it's a real problem for a lot of artists, arts workers, especially lower income and middle income folks.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. So I'm taking away, I guess the big takeaways are, you know, as we are approaching the end of the year, look at what your deductibles are and really, be stingy with your deductibles. Like, count every penny, every cent. And then I'm also hearing pay off as much of your high interest debt as you can, i.e., credit cards and that sort of thing. Try to get that as down to zero as possible. And if you reach that and are able to do that, then it's never too late to start a nest egg, a rainy day fund, saving, saving, savings.
I think one of the myths that capitalism tells us and that we internalize is I must pay off my debt before I can start saving for myself. That there's some moral or ethical relationship between, there's some moral or ethical reason to pay down debt as a borrower. Um, when in fact, most artists and arts workers have debt, are borrowers, are borrowers. And, um, I tend to think of trying to bring that debt into a more manageable place, a place that's less exploitative, meaning the percentage rates that you're paying are reasonable and that you can eventually over time pay them off. But don't wait until they're paid off to start saving for yourself.
Yeah.
So getting in a habit of saving, whether it's for an emergency fund or even retirement savings, like small amounts of money put aside in your 20s and 30s, can have such a big impact at retirement age. So yeah, I always encourage people to try to get into a habit of saving, even when it feels hard, and even just starting with very small amounts of money, $20, $50, whatever a month is possible for you. Um, and don't wait until the debt is paid off or paid down.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Well, thank you for this moment, Amy Smith. Financial literacy. Yes, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. And yeah, till next time, Amy Smith.
Next time. Thank you so
Appreciate
much for
you.
having me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for all this good information. And, we need it. We need it. We need it. We need it.
Anytime, my
All
friend.
right. Okay. Take care. Bye bye.